I learned the difference between being loved and being tolerated on a flight out of Cabo when my new wife asked for space and set a new passcode on her phone. She laughed at the flight attendant's joke, took a picture out the window, and then angled the screen away from me like I was a stranger with sticky fingers. By the time we touched down in Austin, I could already feel the bruise forming, a dull ache under the ribs where certainty used to be. We've been married in hill country, where the sky turns a thirst-quenched blue at dusk and the wind smells like cedar shavings. My parents cried. Her mother cried prettier. I promised a future of steady, patient building. She promised forever. One weekend later, on the return leg from a resort where the margaritas tasted like shaved sunlight, she leaned back against the seat and said, "I need a little space when we get home. I have a lot of collabs coming up." She kissed my cheek like a pat on a friendly dog. Then she changed her passcode while pretending to nap. Back in Austin, I worked the way you hold your breath. 12-hour days at a health tech startup that had learned to sprint, then forgot how to jog. I was a product engineer with a spine made of to-do lists, popular enough in Slack to be tagged when a fire needed a bucket. We built prototypes that sang on Fridays and sulked by Monday. My phone buzzed itself sore. Our PMs wrote deck crimes in rainbow fonts. Our founders floated through the office in hoodies that cost like blazers. I didn't mind. If there's a religion I follow, it's momentum. Macy, my wife, became Makia, a stylist with an Instagram that glowed like a storefront made of summer. She could turn a thrifted scarf into an exit sign for your eyes. At first, I admired the hustle. Then I learned what hustle looked like up close in our kitchen at 11 p.m. when she swiped away a notification the way you would a fly, set the phone face down, and smiled like it was an apology. "Collab went long," she said, brushing past. "You smell like whiteboards." "Is that a scent now?" I tipped my head toward the phone. "New passcode?" It was time. She put her arms around my waist without looking at me. "Don't be offended. My DMs are a mess." By the end of that month, Macy had blended into a circle of women you couldn't confuse with anybody else. They were the wives of our founders and the founders of my wife's new world. They did yoga in a glass-walled house off Lake Austin where the matte colors matched the water. They had bi-monthly brunches at places with tiny spoons and huge checks. They threw charity luncheons that made me want to apologize to every hungry person on earth. I joked, badly, that their events must be tax write-offs wearing lipstick. Macy didn't laugh. She texted under the table. "Babe, there's an opening on Westlake Drive," she said one night, eyes bright. "Our apartment feels like transitional." Transitional to bankruptcy? I told her I was kidding. Then I looked up the listing and felt that hot, stubborn pride I get when a challenge smirks at me. We closed on a 3-bedroom with a slanted late afternoon light that made everything look already remembered. I bought the house the way a man throws himself across a puddle for his date's shoes. I figured make her comfortable, love will unfold like a map, all by itself. Except love doesn't unfold. It shows its corners or it doesn't. At first, the house was a party trick. She filmed Get Ready With Me reels in our bedroom, spun in the hallway light, learned how to say sustainable with a straight face. Boxes of PR gifts arrived like it was Christmas for people who don't need anything. She posted, tagged, swirled, and I worked, bought, promised. Nights she was tired, not angry, not sulky, just folded in on herself, eyes already gone somewhere else. If I reached for her, she'd say, "Early yoga," and smile a tight smile. Her phone vibrated like a trapped locust and she'd shush it, as if the sound itself had misbehaved. I told myself this was a season. I told myself all sorts of things. One Saturday, I came home with groceries I remembered seeing in her friend group stories, pink grapefruit, cucumber things, a candle that smelled like rain bragging about itself. The house was quiet like a theater before the show. In the dishwasher, there were 2 wine glasses with lipstick in a shade Macy never wore. I leaned closer, not her smell. A woodsy, grown-up perfume, expensive enough to be a person. I checked the front door camera, then cursed out loud. The system had been switched to privacy mode from 1 to 4 that afternoon. I hadn't even known that was a feature. When she got home, she kicked off her wedges and floated into the kitchen. "You were out?" I said too casually. "Errands." She tapped her phone and the lock screen glowed long enough to show me a new wallpaper, a lake at dusk, a boat wake curling like handwriting. New passcode, new wallpaper, new air. "You switched the doorbell to privacy?" "Sometimes the packages come when I'm shooting. I don't need comments from the peanut gallery about how many boxes I get." She kissed my cheek, then the top of my head like a benediction on a child. "Thank you for the grapefruit." I kept it. Everything. The glasses, the perfume, the fact that privacy mode had been on exactly when I couldn't see. But I didn't have proof of anything except the shape of my own suspicions. She was in a world where people posted strategically. They delayed stories, reposted sunsets from last Thursday, geotagged cafes they'd left an hour before. The truth wore time like a costume. I told myself I trusted her. I do not recommend lying to yourself in the imperative tense. At work, my friend Jules, who wore hoodies that meant it and kept our prototype running purely out of spite, saw me refreshing our error logs like they owed me closure. "You have that wet cat look," he said. "New house," I said. "Right, the house that says, 'Please do take off your shoes,' but also your identity. How's Macy?" "She's good," I said. "Busy." "Busy like building or busy like curated?" He grinned, but his eyes weren't kidding. Don't start. He shrugged, palms up. You used to tell me everything when we broke prod. You don't talk about your life anymore, just the furniture in it. That night, watching Macy choose between two identical sweaters for a story, as if our safety depended on it, I said, Do you think we're okay? We have a mortgage and health insurance, she said with a half laugh. That's the adult version of okay. I mean us. We're fine. I just need space to do what I'm building. You do too. She angled the phone and smiled a public smile. Hold this ring light? I held it. Of course I held it. If you want to see who you are, notice what you're willing to hold while someone else decides what they need. Months stack like magazines you tell yourself you'll read later, then our startup plateaued. The metrics that once leaped now yawned. Our founders started using phrases like optimizing for runway and right sizing, and everyone learned that meant eat your feelings and keep your head down. I worked more, not because anyone asked, because doing more is my accent. If I'm moving, then nothing can catch me. One Sunday morning, I woke to the sound of Macy laughing downstairs in our kitchen. It wasn't her content laugh, which is pure performance, but the real one she used to have when we were new, from the belly, unscripted. My heart did a hopeful, stupid thing. I went down barefoot. She was on FaceTime, barefaced and beautiful, sitting at the island where we'd once planned vacations we never took. No, I'm gonna pass on the Davenport thing, she said into the phone. He's sweet, but it's not that. When she noticed me, she ended the call too quickly. Her smile snapped off like a light. Who was that? I asked. Lydia, we're finalizing the table placements for next week's luncheon. Why'd you say he's sweet? I didn't, she said too fast. You did. She grabbed the mug with both hands. You're hearing what you want to hear. Am I? It came out small. I tasted sleep in my mouth, but also the copper of humiliation. I'm asking. She stared at me for a long time, as if measuring how much of me was left. Then she stood. Let's not do this before coffee. Let's do it whenever truth lives, I said. My voice surprised both of us. Who is he? She scraped her nail along the mug's handle. No one. One of the founders asked if I could consult on a brand refresh for a board spouse. It's weird. We're not doing it. Happy? Ecstatic, I said, and watched the floor slide slightly under my feet. 2 days later, my Amex flagged a potential duplicate charge at a place I didn't recognize. The Carpenter Hotel on a Tuesday afternoon when I was in a meeting trying to name a feature without embarrassing myself. When I scrolled, there were 2 other charges from that same week, a bar tab midday, draft house, a boutique I wouldn't walk into without a translator for the price tags. Tiny charges compared to the roof over our heads, but it was like seeing gravel where you were told there was only glass. I am not a jealous man by sport. I am a jealous man by arithmetic. If you give me columns, I will reconcile them. So I went line by line, and my stomach turned like a bad engine. Whenever she said she'd been at yoga by the lake, there were Uber receipts to Westlake addresses that weren't on any yoga studio's map. Once, 2 rides, 15 minutes apart, but the same pick up our house, and a drop-off back at our house with the note tip in cash. When I asked, my voice careful, she said, brands sometimes send cars because they know I hate driving. She rolled her eyes like I was overreacting and handed me a lemon cookie from a gift box with a bow. At night, I lay awake next to her and scrolled my own Slack history to calm down, proof that my hours were real. The timestamps felt like a diary written by somebody else who refused to sleep. By then, sleep with Macy was either back-to-back or separate rooms. She told me she needed to wake up at 5 for sunrise reels. I believed her because believing her was cheaper than what it might cost not to. A week later, I was on her upstairs landing when I heard her in the bathroom on a call. I told you, she was saying, voice low. It's not that kind of marriage. It works. I have what I need. He has what he needs. Something in me deflated and then snapped back with new shape. I went downstairs, walked out onto the small balcony like it might offer a better version of air, and looked at the hills we had bought a view of. The house shone. It was good at that. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed. Are we roommates? I asked. Don't be dramatic, she said. I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm trying to be accurate. I waited. When you changed your passcode on the flight home, what changed? She held my gaze. I needed privacy. From your husband? From everyone, she said, and then added, as if she were correcting a recipe, and yes, from you. Why? I didn't want to start marriage as customer support for your insecurity. I laughed, short and ugly. You're not wrong that I'm insecure, but cause and effect matters. My insecurity is not what changed your passcode. You're not hearing me, she said. I have to be careful with my brand. And what am I said, in relation to your brand? You're my husband, she said, bored. 2 days later, I found the old iPad we used to stream recipes during the pandemic. It had spent 2 years under a stack of cookbooks we never cooked. I charged it just to see if it still woke up. When it did, it bloomed with a home screen wallpaper from our early days, Macy in a denim jacket, hair in the wind, making a face at me that meant, this is the part where we fall in love. The iPad was still logged into her iCloud. I did not go looking for pain. The pain lived here. In a folder called Archive, I found 3 months of photos from about 6 years earlier, which would have been just before we got engaged. At first, the pictures were what you'd expect. Latte art that had no business being that pretty, the back bridge at sunset, the kind of selfies you take when you can't believe you get to call someone yours. Then a run of photos at a bar on South Lamar I hadn't seen before. Different dates in order, same corner table. A man's hand in one shot, half visible, big knuckles, calluses that said he worked with something heavier than comment sections. The album wasn't organized like an affair, it was organized like a memory she wanted close by and also hidden. There's a way your brain tries to save your life when it recognizes a disaster too late. It throws out rational little rafts. Maybe it was a cousin, maybe it was an old friend, maybe the hand belonged to the photographer. My brain tried, my gut did not. In the Notes app was a draft with a date stamp from that same season. I like having a life that looks the way I want it. The part where I'm supposed to feel something is harder. And then the text thread. The man's name was just an initial R, like she'd hidden the rest to keep a promise to both of them. Their messages were affectionate in a way that made me want to unzip my skin and step out. It didn't look like late night lust. It looked like two people who meet in the middle of their days. There were 3 months of it, and then it stopped like a show that wasn't renewed. The last message from her, we're not aligned, but you reminded me I want to feel alive. Thank you, I'm going to take care of me. Then nothing. I put the iPad down gently like it was sleeping. If you asked me what hurt the most, it wasn't the hand or the messages, it was the sentence about wanting a life that looks the way she wanted. That was our house, that was my shoulders. That was what I was for her. I did not explode. I had work in the morning. I brushed my teeth next to her in silence and tasted mint and dust. She glanced at me. What? She said. Nothing, I said, and mint. Not here. Not while I'm this shape. We kept going. People do. You can pretend to be a bridge while you are breaking. You can attend charity luncheons that convert your money into someone else's virtue. You can make small talk with men who own the moon and women whose smiles could cut glass. If you are quiet enough, no one will notice you're drowning in the air. When the startup announced our reduction in force, it meant my team would stay and my sense of control would go. The founders held an all-hands where they said the phrase, heavy heart, like it was a mantra. Then I sat in a conference room with 2 engineers who looked at me the way kids look at a tornado. I told them I'd fight for them. That night, I drove home the long way, across the bridge over Lady Bird Lake where runners moved like metronomes. I had run that trail once with Macy when we were still us. She'd stopped to film the way the light fell in the trees. You should be in it, she'd said. I had waved her off, sweating. No one needs to see my face on purpose. In our kitchen, she had set out place cards for the luncheon she was co-hosting. Her handwriting was perfect. Mine looks like a patient with a late-stage tremor. How was your day? She asked without looking up. Bad, I said. We let people go. She paused, then nodded. That's hard for them and for you. It is, I said, surprised she said the right thing. How was yours? A shoe fell through, she said, and sighed. We pivot. We. I let that pronoun hover in the air and then felt it dust my shoulders as it fell. A week later, on a Tuesday evening when the cicadas sang like a power line, she stood in our kitchen and said the thing that snapped the lights off in my version of our marriage. I need to say something, Macy said. Her voice was too steady. Okay. I never loved you the way you needed, she said, calmer than I've ever been. I liked our life. I liked the pace, the people, the circle. 6 years ago, I had a 3-month thing and I realized I don't want what you want. I don't want your closeness. I want a life that feels like mine. I know that sounds awful, but it's the truth. For a moment, everything in the room grew edges, the tile, the air, me. What am I to you? I asked. It came out dry. She looked right at me and did not flinch. A sponsor of a normal life. I laughed. It wasn't funny. It was the only sound my body could make that wasn't a sob. I walked past her and out onto the back deck and sat in a chair we'd bought because the saleswoman said, you'll have your coffee out here every morning. We never did. A south wind moved the oaks and the night smelled like hot leaves. I stayed quiet for 24 hours. We lived in the same house like two ambassadors who'd overstepped their brief. Then I texted her, can you come by the Westlake house at noon tomorrow? I need to talk without the furniture in the way. What are you doing? Jules asked at work when he saw my face. I'm checking how loud Echo is, I said. At noon, the house was staged to be sold. We'd decided, months back, that if the startup didn't soar again, we'd let go of the mortgage that made my pulse a metronome. Our realtor had emptied certain rooms to show the bones. It looked like a model home you could bleed all over and the walls would stay clean. Macy walked in wearing sunglasses like armor. Her heels sounded like a metronome in pain. Why here? She asked. Because in here, you can hear yourself tell the truth. She took off her glasses, set them on the island, lined them up with the edge. We already did this. No, I said. You made a statement. I didn't ask you anything. I have questions. She lifted her chin. Okay, who was he? It doesn't matter. She looked away. It was years ago. It matters to me. Do I know him? You don't, she said. It was a bartender. He was kind to me in a way you weren't then. My hands went cold. I was working a lot. You were working at being right, she said. He asked me how I was and waited for the answer. You had a 3-month affair during our run-up to engagement. Saying it out loud felt like biting tinfoil. Did you love him? No, she said. I loved how I felt with him. I loved that my life was bigger than you and your sprint charts. And with me, I said, you love the house. And the circle, she added, not remotely ashamed. I like women who know what to order. I like sitting at big tables and feeling like I belong. You could have belonged with me in a 1-bedroom over a taco shop. I didn't want that. I nodded. The house was so empty, our voices sounded like we were in a throat. Why did you marry me? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Because you said you take care of things, she said, and I believed you. I wasn't lying. I just wasn't you. Is there someone now? I asked. There's always someone, she said, but not in the way that matters to you. Does anything matter in the way that matters to me? The question came out small and, I admit it, more pleading than I wanted. She stared at me until I had to look away. Your version of love is a lot of holding still, she said. I don't hold still. What do you hold? I said, if not people. Options, she said softly. I hold options. I can't live like that. I know, she said. I know, she said. We stood like that for a time that was not long, and also the rest of our marriage. Then she said, so what do we do? Nothing together, I said. I'll move out. You can keep the house until it sells. I'll talk to a lawyer. We can be kind. Or we can be quick. I prefer kind. I prefer clean, she said, but kind is fine. She picked up her sunglasses and left. Her heels tapped, then faded. The door clicked like a last line. I sat on the floor of the empty living room and felt my body for injuries. A laugh bubbled up and died. Then I cried in a way that made my ribs feel like they were trying to leave my body. It wasn't just Macy. It was the part of me that had agreed to be a sponsor of a normal life. The part of me that had believed that if I kept building a better container, the contents would become love by default. I moved into a one-bedroom off Riverside, 2 blocks from the trail by Lady Bird Lake, the kind of place where the neighbors carry paddleboards more often than briefcases. The first night, there was a fruit fly in my sink and an echo I could live with. I slept with the window cracked and woke to the sound of runners' feet and a train going somewhere else. I ran. At first, badly, then less badly. One morning, a woman matched my pace without meaning to. She wore a hospital badge on a lanyard and shoes that knew what to do. You look like you're running from a house fire, she said, friendly, not flirty. Something like that, I said. You look like you know CPR. I do, she said and smiled. Catherine, Ethan. We ran a mile together and then she waved and peeled off toward the pedestrian bridge. See you out here, she said without making it a promise. The next day, I did. At work, I stopped performing loyalty to a culture that asked for blood offerings. I took a recruiter's call from a company across town with the radical idea that people could build things and sleep. During the interview, when they asked what I wanted, I said, to go home and still be a person. The hiring manager laughed, then didn't. We can do that, he said. We divided the furniture with a kind of mercy I didn't know we had in us. Macy kept the pieces that had looked best on her feed. I kept the coffee table with the scratch from where we slid pizza across it like a frisbee on the night we moved in. When I came back to the Westlake house one last time to grab 2 boxes I'd left in the garage, it felt like a lookbook for someone else's life. The new buyer's realtor had left brochures on the island with words like aspirational and organic flow. I walked through the rooms and said a quiet goodbye to the man who had tried to fix love by making a bigger kitchen. My mother asked if I wanted to come home for a while. I told her I was home. I meant the trail, the one bedroom that smelled like coffee in the morning but not at night, the job where my eyes were not a currency. I meant a life I could pick up and hold with both hands. She cried anyway, then sent me a set of towels that didn't match. I kept them all. Macy texted me twice in the first month, once to ask where the Dutch oven went, once to say, you're good at the leaving parts. I typed and deleted. I had a lot of practice, then put my phone face down and went for a run. I saw Catherine more days than I didn't. She wore different badges with different departments and explained, when I asked, that she rotated where she was needed. I like being useful, she said, and shrugged. She never asked me what startup I'd been at, which was the kindest thing anyone had done in years. One Sunday, we grabbed coffee and sat on a lake's edge where the turtles act like they own the place. You're less on fire, she said. I ran out of furniture to burn, I said. Now it's just me. She waited. It surprised me every time how she did that, like my words might be worth the pause. My wife told me I was a sponsor of a normal life, I said finally. I believed her. I mean, she was the one saying it, but I also believed it because something in me thought, if I provide enough container, love will fill it. And now? Catherine asked. And now I'm suspicious of containers, I said. I'm learning to like air. She smiled without trying to fix me. Air is very good for running. We did not make a movie out of it. We ran together or didn't. We split a muffin. She never once asked me to hold a ring light. When we finally kissed, it was at a crosswalk where the light took too long, and she laughed softly against my mouth like something had landed in the right field. Months later, I ran into 2 of the founder wives from Macy's Circle at a cafe where the plates are large enough to double as shields. They smiled with their mouths. Ethan, one of them said, as if calling a dog they weren't sure would come. We haven't seen you. I've been busy doing unoptimized things, I said. They blinked. One adjusted a bracelet that probably had a name. We heard you moved, she said. Yeah. I lifted my coffee cup in a small salute. Turns out floors don't make you kinder. When I got home, I laughed out loud. Then I sat on my couch, the cheap one that welcomed slouching, and cried for 5 minutes like it was a stretch I owed my muscles. It wasn't grief, it was relief in hearing my own voice out loud without apology. I kept the iPad. Not because I wanted to keep paying, but because I wanted to retire the part of me that thought if I don't look at it, it will go away. I factory reset it and gave it to my sister for her kids. Before I wiped it, I looked one last time at the photo of Macy in the denim jacket from our early days. For 30 seconds, I let myself miss the idea of a person. Then I pressed erase and watched the screen go white like a new morning. On a cool afternoon in early spring, I found a rhythm on the trail that didn't feel like penance. The air had that wet chalk smell it gets after a small rain, and the water threw light around like a magician. I saw Catherine ahead and caught up without thinking. "How's your heart?" she asked, falling into step. "Muscular," I said, "and learning." We ran in silence for a while, which is a better kind of prayer than I'd been taught. By summer, Macy had moved out of the Westlake house and had sold to a family with two Labradors who will never ask them for content. I heard she started seeing someone who actually is a founder. I hope she finds the version of belonging that doesn't require a new bag to feel like a new self. I say that without malice, which is new. I don't carry the hate you think I might. Hate makes a terrible hobby. My mother met Catherine and said afterward, "She has kind eyes, like that's a diagnosis, and maybe it is." On the drive home, Catherine, who doesn't collect founders, told me she liked my mother's casserole, and we laughed until we cried because that's not even a euphemism. When Macy's sponsor line comes back to me, as lines do in the quiet parts of the night, I let it ring and fade like a phone I don't have to answer. I keep some pieces of that old life intentionally: the table with the pizza scratch, the habit of buying grapefruit. I keep a photograph of the hill country sky the evening we got married, not because it was proof of anything, but because the light still looks like forgiveness. I let it be a reminder that some promises were meant for a different version of you, and that version did the best he could. The last time I saw Macy was in the produce section at HEB, both of us reaching for avocados that had agreed to be ripe on the same day. She smiled like people do when they meet an old neighbor. I nodded. Neither of us asked how the other was. We both looked like we'd answered enough surveys. When I got home, Catherine had left a note on my counter, a real paper note like it was 2005. "Dinner on the east side? If you pick the tacos, I'll bring the conversation. P.S. I know your favorite trail by smell now." I stood there a long moment, feeling my chest do that new thing where instead of breaking, it makes room. I texted back, "Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes." If you ask me now what I learned, it's that you can build a house that looks like safety and still be lonely in every room. You can work 12 hours a day because you're good at it and not because it loves you back. You can mistake someone's gratitude for love. You can be a sponsor of a life and still feel like a guest. But you can also move into a one-bedroom with bad lighting and get your breath back like you found it in a drawer. Sometimes, when we run over the boardwalk near the water and the wind gusts hard enough to push against my chest, I lean in and let it. A thing that once would have felt like opposition now feels like proof that I am here, that I am moving, that I am not holding a ring light for anyone but the day. Two questions for you. If someone told you to your face that they love the life you made but not you, would you stay for the decor or leave for the air? And how do you tell the difference between privacy and secrecy in a person you call yours? Like, comment, and subscribe if you want more first-person stories that start with a bruise and end with a breath.